Do you want to turn your workshop into a professional one? Buying stuff for the workshop can be really expensive compared to 3D printing, and if you thought 3D printing was hard, I'll show you it's not, and these 3D prints will turn any ordinary workshop into a professional one, and the best part, you can do it today. I'll also reveal my best invention to date for the first time in this video. It's a work in progress and I've already spent a lot of time on it, but I think you deserve to see it. That's what he said. It actually works! Years ago when I got my first 3D printer, I had no idea what they were capable of. But now that I've been doing it for a long time, I can tell you that there's been a lot of development. It's become cheaper, easier, and a lot of the things I 3D print don't even exist to buy. The absolute best part about 3D printing though is that I'm able to come up with an idea and an hour later I can have it in my hand, and that in itself is just mind-blowing. Like this for instance, even though this isn't workshop related, well, it kind of is. This is my podcasting room and I have these headphones and I just placed them on the table right here. That means less workspace, so if I could mount my headphones somewhere else, I could solve that problem. Well, if you search one of the sites for headphone hangers, you'll find plenty of files, but that's not what I enjoy doing. So I'll do a challenge. I bet I can have one designed and printed within an hour. Let's go. So let's make ourselves a quick hanger. I know it's shaped as a circle, so just put a number in. Let's offset that by 5. And if I just add 2 screw holes, that's the screw holes, just extrude this entire thing. Because the thickness is like 40, so we'll go more. Go 10 more, I say. Now it's 35. That'll do. Actually, let's extrude it 5 more, like that. I'll add my own face to this as a logo. Cause I'm a narcissist and that's why I'm on YouTube, probably. Chamfer the screw holes a bit. That. Let's also round over these corners a bit. That looks quite okay, I would say. All right, let's pop it in the printer. Let's give it a bit of strength. Slice, print plate, filament in that one. Black, shoot, let's go. And now that's gonna be 48 minutes of printing, so I'll just wait it out. Now attach it to the wall, hang the headphones up. Voila. See how this is the best friend of any maker? Like, how is this even possible? An hour ago I didn't have a hanger for my headphones and now I do. So, there are a lot of people selling these magnetic dustboard connections on Etsy, and so did I for a while. But I think most of them have a big flaw. And I want to show you why I think these are better, safer, and how you can print them yourself. And I'll show you exactly how I make them. But first I want to show you some 3D prints I think are crucial to my workshop, including an upgrade that turns your quick clamps into the perfect clamps. And maybe at the end of the video you can tell me if you feel intrigued to buy a 3D printer. So let's start at the basics. Say you do get a 3D printer, nowadays you can get one for as low as $250 and upwards. I've had a lot of different 3D printers by now, and my go-to printer is this. Just look at the size of this thing! I'm just kidding, it's the Bambu Lab printers. This is the P1P, which is currently $599. That's more than double the price of the cheapest one, but it's more than double good, if that makes any sense. It's been really reliable for me, and I can just 3D print wirelessly from my phone or computer, which is just great. Once you have a 3D printer, you obviously need plastic. I pay somewhere in between 20 to 30 bucks for a spool of 1 kilo filament. And for reference, this part uses around 75 grams of filament, which means I can print 13 of these on 1 spool of filament. That means around $2 a piece in plastic. Now there are a bunch of different types of plastics to get. And depending on what you're printing, you can decide on that. But that also means you need to figure out what type of printer you'll be using, because not all printers can handle the harder materials. I mostly print in PLA or PETG, and for any beginners, that's what I suggest as well. Both of them are easy to print and you'll have good results. However, they're both quite fragile and cannot handle extreme heat or bashing. So if you're looking to print harder materials or other types of plastic, you need to investigate the printer you're getting and make sure that it can handle those types of plastics. Once you have the printer though with plastic, all you really need to do is get a file, either online or draw it up yourself and hit print. Online there are tons of resources to get files. What I find really good about the Bambu Lab printers, and this isn't sponsored by the way, I just love the way they work. You can use the app, find something you like and just hit print without going through a bunch of work. For that reason, I actually bought my kids a printer as well so that they could get into it. So if you don't feel like drawing up your own stuff, there is no need. There are lots of great resources out there, and if you ever feel like it, you can learn the basics to draw up simpler things later. I usually go online to see if there are any files, and it rarely happens that I can't find it, but when that happens, it's one of my favorite things to solve the problem myself. So if you thought this was extremely hard, it's not. And the workshop upgrades I'm about to show you will fit your workshop equally good as mine. They're just made to fit any workshop and you can get them from my website. Now let's get into some of the actual upgrades you can do with a 3D printer. This little thing. This little teeny tiny thing can actually be really useful. A center finder is great when you want to draw a line on the edge of your wood and in center. So what I've done is that I drew up a very simple one. I have it on my printables in a couple of different sizes to download. They're all marked with the thickness of the material you can use it for. It's a 30-minute print, and you can just have a bunch of them lying around the workshop if you want. They're especially handy when you want to raise your blade on the table saw to half the thickness of your wood, for instance when doing half laps. And of course the same goes for the router table or any other tool you can think of with a height setting. They're also really good when you want to mark a location for drilling holes for dowels, for instance. And the price of printing one of these is around $1 or less. And the ones I found on Amazon were a lot more. Hey, what are you doing? I'm sorry, I just wanted to 3D print the things you were talking about in the video and I don't have a 3D printer. So you just figured you'd steal mine? Yeah. Well, you don't have to because the sponsor of today's video is PCBWay and they make PCB and PCB assemblies, but they also do 3D printing and CNC machining. So honestly, all you have to do is upload the file to their website, choose what type of filament color you want, and then have them make it and ship it directly to you. Oh, okay. Well, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, no problem, mate. Anytime. What a nice guy. Now, this might be one of my favorites of the entire pile of prints. And if you ever want to do a roundover, my preferred way is printing one and using that as a template. The thing is, I thought it was a bit of a waste printing a new one every time I need one, so I made a base instead, and that way I can print whatever size radius I want without printing an entire jig all at once. Say I need a 1-inch roundover, I print the 1-inch version and it's a lot smaller than printing the entire jig itself. I put that in, it's a tight enough fit, and then draw around my material. Cut the majority out with a bandsaw or the jigsaw, and then do the rest with a flush trim bit and the 3D printed jig as the template. Now, if you have a rectangular piece of wood like I do here, you could do all the edges with the same roundover, sand it using this 3D printed 90-degree sander that I downloaded from Thingiverse, which is an absolute banger of a 3D print. Although it takes a while to attach it, it looks 90 degrees to me, and it makes sure we get a perfect 90 degrees when sanding the piece, which is a pretty big deal, especially for big tabletops. This could be a trivet, or a serving tray, or ping pong bat with a hole in it. I don't care what you do with your roundovers, just do them. Another really quick print that I just love is this little thing. I have a Bosch miter saw and a Festool dust collector. Since they are two different companies, you won't see a dust attachment from any of them. That would be like Coca-Cola and Pepsi collaborating on a new flavor. It's just not gonna happen. Well, I made one that fits the Festool dust collector on one hand and the Bosch miter saw on the other. That solves a problem a lot of us might have with just a quick print. And if it ever breaks, you can just print a new one. That of course goes for all these prints. There is really not much more to say about this print, so on to the next one. Now I have an idea for a project, so I'll take you with me in the process of actually making it. And it involves these quick clamps. They come in different shapes and forms, but they usually have some kind of rubber feet that you can actually just pull off and put back on. So my plan is to replace these with something that would allow me to clamp in an angle. Say if you want to clamp leg pieces angled together, you could do it with this. So my plan is to take these off, replace them with something else that allows me to swivel it. Well, that's the idea at least. So I'll start at the computer and try to come up with something. I really think this is a good idea. So it's a total of 30 millimeter gap by 6. There's an opening at the top. So I'll put those numbers in. After some more CAD drawing, I had them printed, assembled with some 4mm machine screws, and in only an hour I had my first prototype. Okay, so the pieces are printed, they fit together, but unfortunately they're a bit sloppy. I was gonna put washers in between here, but then I realized that's just hard with really tiny washers and big fat hands, so it's not snug enough. Like even this part is just too loose. So I'll go back, change the dimensions a bit, and then I can have another go. After doing even more modifications, I had a bit ready to try. So my main concern here is that I just won't be able to clamp them good enough, but we can only try. And to make sure it won't slip, I've added some grip tape on it. And I've also cut these pieces just to simulate a leg assembly. So I'll put them together, see if I can clamp it. It actually works. I mean, it works. I've pushed quite a lot of clamping force, and actually these pieces I was afraid they wouldn't hold, but they seem to be quite steady as well. That is amazing. So what I'll do is that I'll upload these to my website, but since all clamps are different sizes, I'll upload the Fusion file and you can go in and actually change the size of the part that actually goes onto the clamp. Then you can print and use them with any quick clamps out there basically. To change the size, you simply open the file, adjust the width and the thickness of the first drawing, and also how wide you want the opening of the gap to be. And that should just do it for other clamps as well. But anyway, these come off. I can actually put the original back on there and use the quick clamp as normal again. Only this one is really tight. I'll do it off camera later. I think this takes the quick clamp to a new level. What if you want to use them in the other direction, you ask? Well, here it is. That's still a work in progress, but it works. This is something I've seen before and I wanted to make it better. This is a simple saw guide. You attach it to your workpiece and you can saw at a perfect 90°. And one of the things I think would make it better is to put magnets on it to keep the saw in place. And also to put them on the inside of the print. That way you won't risk them coming loose. I'll show how it's done on the next project because that also involves magnet, but once printed it looks like this. You can't see the magnets, but when using it, it will hold the saw next to the jig and you can do your cuts without worrying about being off 90. Before I show my favorite print though, I will show some of the other ones that didn't make the cut for this video, but I think are still really cool. For storage, I have for instance 3D printed a bunch of boxes for this small parts storage, organizing all my screws. In the router table, I have 3D printed storage for all my tools, but also for my bits. For hanging the drill, I have this small hanger that attaches to the hanger on the drill, which means I have all my drills stored on the wall. Not to speak of my sandpaper storage, that in itself is an entire video basically, but that works really good. The tracks are on the wall with 3D printed parts, but also I have a 3D printed 90-degree cut guide attached to it. Now, these are magnetic dust collection attachments. I have them on all my machinery that uses the dust collector, and there is also one on the dust collector hose. So the way they work is that they attach the hose to the machines with just a magnetic lock. The way most of these are done is with the magnets on the outside of the print. That way there is a risk of them coming loose and, worst case scenario, ruining my machines or the dust collector. But it might also be dangerous having magnets coming loose around spinning tools. So I've put the magnets on the inside with every other magnet's polarity upside down, which means that all the attachments will fit together no matter what I do. So the way I make them is I load my file into the slicer of the 3D printer and hit slice. After that part is done, I'll drag the preview slider down until I see the hole for the magnet. Just before the printer will cover it up. I right click on the timeline and I hit pause. Then I can start the print, and after a while it will stop and notify me it's time to put the magnets in. It won't say time to put the magnets in, but you get the drift. So I grab a bunch of these. These are N52 neodymium magnets, which are the strongest, and I also suggest you get these. They're 10 by 3 millimeter thick. I put one down into the first hole, then I put the next one down the opposite way. The only downside with this is that the magnets are so freaking hard to separate. Your fingers get worn out really quickly, but that's a pain you have to live with. And then I go around the entire print putting down magnets, and then I hit resume on the printer. If you're worried they're gonna magnetize to the print head, you don't have to, because they're already magnetized to the bottom of the print bed. Once the print is finished, this is what I have. The magnets are safe on the inside, but I can still attach it to any machine and it's strong. I usually have to twist them to get them loose rather than drag them apart. These are for a 100mm hose, and I just put the hose on and a hose clamp, and that will keep them in place. I even have a female adapter on my router table that I just attach the hose to. And that is just a short way of showing how you can upgrade your workshop with a 3D printer. In my next video I will show something that I think is my best thing yet that solves a problem that would have cost me $1,000. Until then, bye.